you guys, then I will ask you guys for your questions. Then you tell me your questions, I will answer them. Okay. And this is only because we have 900 people in the class. If you only had 200 people in the class or 100 people in the class, the people who are already are part of Scalar Academy, they will tell you that there we have a free conversation going on. People can ask questions, but here we have 900 people, right? So just try to appreciate that and just try to bear with me for a while. Cool. So that's great. I am hoping that I will now receive lesser questions for a while, and let me continue, right? Cool. That's great. Okay. My video is lagging. Okay. I'm not sure why that's the case. Just give me a minute, guys. Just give me a minute. I will just join back in a moment. Okay. Is it lagging still? It seems it is. Okay. There is an app is equal to 2. These are our MVP. Let's move to the second point that we discussed. The second point, guys, if you remember, was estimation of scale. Is that correct? Now let's focus a lot and see how do we do estimation of scale. Okay. Let's say how do we do estimation of scale. This is very, very important. I will start with estimating the number of users that I have. Would anybody be able to point out the number of users that a service like shortened URL will have? Any idea, guys? Millions of users. So let's say overall, not every feature requires you to log in. So overall, the number of users can be less. But if I remove the idea of having people to log in and I say unique active visitors per day, do you think it would be fine if I assume something like, let's say, 50 million users per day? So the people who were saying 10,000, 5,000, 4,000, guys, we are building a $1 billion company. If we are trying to build a $1 billion company, 10,000 users will not help. So let's assume I have 50,000 unique users who come to my service every day. If 50 million users come to my service every day, Ranjit, just give me a minute. Now let's try to figure out how many of them will try to create a shortened URL. Guys, can you understand this? If 50 million people are coming to your service every day to create URLs, is it fine to assume that all of them will be creating URLs, shortening URLs, if these are the number of people who are coming to your website? Okay. So let's say maybe 25 million of them will create it. Maybe half of them will create it. So let's say 25 million of them will essentially be creating a URL. If they create, 25 million of them create a URL, can we also estimate the average number of URLs they will create every day? Sushil, okay guys, so let me point out one thing. If you take this 25 million and change it to 50 million, nobody is going to cut any marks for that. If you change this to 10 million, nobody is going to run after you at all. The idea is that you should have some logic in your mind, that you should be able to explain to the interviewer that this is how you're doing the back of the envelope calculation, and nobody is going to judge you on thoda upar niche. Does it make sense? But on the other hand, if somebody comes and say ki acha Tarun ne to kaha tha, nobody is going to judge me, I can take any number, and somebody comes that I will have 100 billion users every day. So my statement breaks. My statement is no longer valid if you take these kind of assumptions. 100 billion people ही नहीं है दुनिया में, उतने लोग कहाँ से आके तुम्हारे tiny URL पे आ रहे हैं. So that's the point. Guys, does it make sense? So the idea is just that you can start with any estimate, but it should not be way off. That's the only idea. Okay. Now let's come back to it. You have 25 million people creating shortened URLs every day. What is a fair number? On average, how many shortened URLs would they create? 2. Priyam says 2. What about the others? 5, 10. अरे भाई दिन में बस shortened URL ही create कर रहे हैं क्या? Okay, so maybe I would say 4 would be a good number. 3, 4 would be a good number. I will take 4 because that will help me to make it 100 million. It will help me to round off to 100 million. Okay. Sahil, now 0 is a number that you should not take, because if you take 0, it essentially means you wrongly defined your 25 million number, right? So you should not try to go to the extremes which break your assumptions. Okay. So let's say 4 URL shortening per day. So does it mean that every single day you are going to have 100 million new URLs? Is that clear to everybody? Is this calculation till this point in time clear to everybody? 100 million shortened URLs every single day. I would want all of you to reply, guys. This is very, very important. Do you understand that the moment you create a new URL, yes, 4 per person, 4 per person. Yes, 4 per person. That's right. The moment you create a shortened URL, do you understand that this is essentially a write request to your system? How many of you understand this? You are essentially writing something to your system. So this is the number of write requests that you're going to have every single day. If you create 100 million new URLs, can you estimate the URLs that people are going to come up to you with, the shortened URLs, and asking you for the larger URL? Can anybody estimate that? If every single day I am creating 100 million new URLs, how many read requests can happen every single day? Would anybody say that the read should be less than write here? Should the reads be less than write? No, that's a wrong assumption. I would say maybe a 10:1 read and write would be sufficient here. Is that fine, guys? Is that fine? Would a 10x reads be fine? It essentially means that I would have 1 billion reads per day. Does it make sense to everybody? I have 100 million writes per day. I have 1 billion reads per day. So guys, I have just multiplied the number of writes with 10 and I got it 1 billion. Anirudh says, shouldn't it be more? Anirudh, yeah, dekho, it depends on what kind of a person you are. I created a shortened URL, shared with you. Maybe 50 of you opened that URL or 30 of you opened that URL. But if I was not in a classroom setting and I shortened a URL, maybe 2 people will open it or 3 people will open it. Does it make sense? So the idea is that the average we can very well say that on average it would be 10 times the write load. Guys, is it making sense? If I have 100 million new writes every day, I can assume I will have 1 billion reads every day. Priya says, repeat the read part again. Priya, I am saying that whenever you have a system, you estimate the writes. To estimate the reads, you have to come up with a ratio. There would be some system which would have 1:1 read write. There would be some system which would have 10:1 read write. There would be some system which would have 100:1 read write. Does it make sense, Priya? Does it make sense? After you have decided the number of writes, you need to come up with how many times on average you are going to read per unit write. Does it make sense, Priya? And here I have just made an assumption that for this system, 10:1 would be a good ratio. Okay. Yes, Karan, you have to make some reasonable assumptions. The idea is reasonable assumptions. What do I mean by reads here? By reads, I mean that 1 billion queries will be received by my system where people will come with shortened URLs. People will come and say, hey man, bit.ly/ab756. Can you tell me what is the actual URL for this? Niketha, does it make sense? Niketha, does it make sense? Read basically means people coming to you with shortened URLs and asking you to give back the larger URL. Is that clear to everybody in the class? Is that clear to everybody in the class? That's great. So I have these read requests. So I have 1 billion read requests. I have 100 million write requests. And now, right. Ashish, I will come to that. All these calculations, do we need to tell to the interviewer? Yes, Udit. So you will have to do these calculations. You will not take this much amount of time that I am taking because I am explaining to you. There you will just very, very quickly keep on taking these numbers and doing the calculation. Is that correct, Udit? But you will have to do this calculation for the interviewers. Okay. Now, if I have 1 billion reads per day and 100 million writes per day, yes, I will speed up, guys. I will speed up. Now, let's try to estimate the amount of storage that will be required. Is that correct, guys? Milind, you are absolutely right. Let's try to figure out the amount of storage that will be required for every pair that you store. Do you understand? You will have to store two things. One, you will have to store the larger URL, the actual URL, and then you will have to store the shortened URL. Is that correct? Is that correct? I will have to store a pair of shortened and larger URL. Now, I want to understand what would be the average length of the actual URL. Can somebody tell me that? Maybe 100 characters. Is that fine? Is that fine? Maybe 100 characters. 100 characters का मेरा URL होगा. Every character takes 1 byte. Is that correct, guys? So I will essentially take 100 bytes for storing a new URL. Okay. Guys, I'm trying to speed up now. So I will not entertain queries of why not 500, why not 1000. You can change the numbers, but according to me, 100 would be a good estimate. 100 characters are too much for a URL. In actual reality, you would have even very, very small characters as well. Okay, I am assuming it is making sense. Now, once you have that actual URL, can you also understand the shortened URL how long should the shortened URL be? So bit.ly is going to be common in all the shortened URLs. Do you understand that I will not need to store anything of bit.ly? Does it make sense? Does it make sense? If after that I store 8 characters, let's say, if I store 8 characters and every character can be a small English alphabet and 0 to 9 characters, then I will essentially have 8 ki power 36 as the number of unique shortened URLs I can create. Is that correct, guys? Is that correct? If I have a alphanumeric characters where small English characters and 10 numbers from 0 to 9, guys, so let's say your characters are from small a to small z and from 0 to 9. Now, you will have 36 characters possible. If there are 8 places, every place will have 36 opportunities. So you will essentially not have this. Essentially have 36 into 36 into 36 and so on and so forth. So 36 ki power 8. I hope it is clear to everybody. 36 ki power 8. Now, if you calculate this, you will understand that 36 is a big number. Okay. 36 ki power 8 is a big number. And maybe that would be sufficient for us for 10 years or so. If you don't feel that sufficient, maybe just increase 8 and make it 10 or make it 11. 8 will also be a very big number. If you make it 9, it will become even bigger. Now, some of you are, 2.8 trillion. Now, some of you will say, why not 62? So you can very well have 26 small characters, 26 big characters and 10 numbers. You can also have that. But the point is, I would not want to confuse my users from capital and small digits. So that's why I will maybe not use the capitals, only use the smalls and the numbers. That essentially makes 36 possibilities for every character. It makes 36 ki power 8 possibilities, right? So now if I have 8 characters being stored for every shortened URL, Do you understand? I have 108 bytes per URL on actual and shortened URL together on the pair. Does this thing make sense to everybody? I hope it does. And let's say I add some bytes of metadata. Let's say I add 12 bytes of metadata. It essentially totally becomes 120 bytes of storage. Is that clear, guys? Is that clear? So 120 bytes of storage per URL. And now let's try to estimate the storage. Every single day, I said 100 million new writes come. 100 million new writes per day happen. I have 120 bytes per write. So what is the amount of storage that I require, guys? Dopamine needs to leave. Okay, dopamine, see you again, man. I hope you enjoyed the class. Anybody who wants to leave can leave. I will take 20-25 minutes more and will cover this tiny URL for you guys. Okay, guys? So whosoever can stay back, please do. Whosoever needs to leave can leave. See you again, guys. I really hope that you guys enjoyed the session. I did my level best. Every hour has 60 minutes and every minute has 60 seconds. So QPS is queries per second. Okay, Vivin says it's 120. It should not be 120, Vivin. Maybe you are making a mistake. It should be 1.2. Now, once I have the read QPS, write QPS, I should also figure out the read QPS. I had 1 billion reads per day. So if 100 million पे 1.2 thousand आ रहा था, यहाँ पर 12,000 QPS आ जाएगा. Does it make sense to everybody? So I have figured out the read QPS. I have figured out the write QPS. I am going to essentially have 12,000 read requests coming per second. Do you understand this is insane? Do you understand this, guys? This is insane amount of traffic that you will expect if you are building a $1 billion company. 12,000 requests per second. Okay. Now, how many requests per second can a machine take? It's dependent on what is the magic that you are doing in the machine. If you are having a machine which does very simple computations, then it can maybe have 5,000 QPS per machine, 10,000 QPS per machine. But if your machine is doing even slightest bit of computations, the QPS per machine will come down. Does it make intuitive sense, guys? Does it make intuitive sense? So let's assume here the simple computation is going on. Per machine, I can have 1,000 QPS per machine. If I have 1,000 QPS per machine, guys, how many machines would I require for the read QPS? I would require 12 machines for read and maybe 1 machine for write. So overall, I would require 13 machines. Is that clear to everybody? And do you understand you will not want to run your machines on 100% utilization? You would want to run your machines on less utilization. So let's say I want to run my machines on 60% utilization. So I should essentially have 20. Why 1 for read? Right? Because for write, the QPS was 1.2 thousand. Isha says, why 12 machines? Because the QPS that one machine can support, Isha, is 1,000. And I want to build a system with 12,000 QPS. Do you understand I will require 12 machines? Does everybody appreciate this? Just divide the QPS per machine from the total QPS that you want to support. So now, if I divide it by like this, I would require almost 25 machines. Do you understand? This is basically the number of app servers that you require. Now, some of you are asking, how did you come at this number 1,000 QPS per machine? I am coming at this number from experience. I have seen so many systems working at 1,000 QPS or 700 QPS or 800 QPS. I have also seen, yes, this will depend on the configuration server, Anurag. I am just taking some average numbers. The system that I was working at me.net, you will be surprised to know that it used to work at around 7,000-8,000 QPS. Hey guys, are you understanding, not understanding? Abhi tak I did not discuss RAM at all. I discussed storage, I discussed the QPS, I discussed the number of machines, and this is how you are going to do in front of your interviewer as well, and he will give you a lot of bonus marks for doing all that. Let's now come to the third point. How do you decide this fraction stuff? This is again coming from experience. You would not want your machines to have running at full capacity, because if you run your machines at full capacity, your machines will start running into errors, and that's the problem. Ideal fraction for read to write is 1:10 or 1:100, depending on what kind of a service you are building. Guys, can you please stay back for 30 more minutes? I will end this beautifully, complete the tiny URL thing. Just end for 30, stay for 30 more minutes, and we'll end this at a very good note. Okay, cool. So we have discussed this. Let's now move on to the third step, which was discussing the trade-offs. शिवांश, I am speeding up. डराओ मत यार, ऐसे इतनी मेहनत करके I am teaching और अब speed up करके I am speeding up, but I want to ensure that everybody appreciates what I am teaching. Cool. So we will not have a break right now because then people will not come back. Let's come to the right trade-off. I will share the notes. Right trade-offs, basically, what kind of trade-offs do you want to build? Let me ask a very first question, guys. Okay, so how many of you want a 2 minutes break?